This is Utah Hustlers, a podcast on how to build your business to $10,000 a month. My name is SKYLAR Beitendorp, and like you, I'm an entrepreneur. And it's my mission to help you achieve success, happiness, and freedom on your own terms. As you may or may not have known, I edit these episodes pretty heavily. They're usually about 40 to 50% longer than what you actually hear. And some of the things I cut out, honestly, hurts me sometimes to do, but the truth is, a lot of people won't listen to an episode that's close to an hour long. Why is this relevant? Well, for most episodes, I get right into the topic that episode is about. But today is a little different. I loved our guest's story so much that I just couldn't get myself to skip it. And the reason is because I believe it will be very relatable to you. And if it's not, it very well could be in the future. And I want you to remember what this person did when things got tough, because he was put in a position where he had no choice but to win. And it's a big reason for his success. His name is Macy. He started a photo and video production company. And over the years, he's worked with a lot of different companies, creating ads and commercials to tell the story of these businesses in a way that sells products and services. As he refers to it, it's the salesman that never sleeps. If a business owner invests the time into creating a quality ad/commercial for their business, you can run that as a paid ad, or you can just have it at the front of your website and let it do its thing. Bobby's gonna go over the 3 stages to creating a commercial and what you need to start. And if that's all you're after, jump ahead roughly 11 minutes and 20 seconds into the interview, and you'll land right when we start getting into that. I believe, though, that his story is important to hear. Without any more further delay, get ready for this episode with Macy.
I am Macy, and I started a company, a content marketing agency called Macy Media. If you're in Utah, it's just like the grocery store, MACEY, media.com. And content marketing's the game, baby. We produce a lot of video content, a lot of professional photos, and we help people with websites, copywriting, even SEO at times. So it's really, we're storytellers, and we're just looking for the best way to tell brand stories.
So when did you start your business?
It was 2019. I worked 8 years in corporate after college. I went and got my bachelor's degree, worked in various roles, worked my way up to like that 6-figure salary. Thought that I'd made it, dude. I was 31. I was making $130 a year. And I'm like, this is life, right? Until I realized that I didn't even like my job. But at that point, I felt stuck because I'm like, how do you just leave that salary? And I had all these friends who were entrepreneurs, and I saw the lifestyles that they had. It wasn't even about the money. It was the time. It was the freedom. And so then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm Moana. Entrepreneurship is the ocean, and it calls me. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, Skylar, like, what am I going to do to get there? I mean, I have 3 kids, and I had just purchased a house that it wasn't crazy, but it's like not cheap, right? And so I have this mortgage, I have my kids, and I'm just living the life of a Utah 31-year-old, and I have these bills that I'm like, I can't just go cold turkey, right? So started saving money, was prepping for it, and I was planning on quitting my job sometime in 2020. That was my goal. Well, 2019, October 2nd, 2019, boom, unexpected layoff, and I was like, oh, all right, well, I knew it, dude. Driving home that day, like I already knew it. And I remember I go home that day and I'm like, I got to talk to my wife, because they laid me off at the end of the day. So it was normal for her, like, oh yeah, Bobby got home at the same time. So I'm sitting there and she could tell something was off, because usually I'm like, I'm bringing the energy and I'm a pretty positive, happy dude. And she could tell something was just a touch off. And I was like, oh, I'll talk to you about it later. And it was eating at her because I had to go run an errand later that night. So then I run the errand and I was like, once the kids go to bed, we can chat or whatever. And she looked at me and she's like, you got laid off, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah.
Dang, she knew.
She knew, dude. But this had happened once prior in 2017 when I worked for a startup.
Okay.
And so it wasn't our first rodeo. The difference at the time was when we worked at that startup, I had just bought a house here in South Jordan, and I had less than $3,000 in my savings account because all my money went toward that down payment of the house. And my wife was 6 months pregnant with our 3rd kid. So I had to go into beast mode to find a job. And I did, and that's a story in and of itself. But this time, like I said, I was planning on quitting at some point, so that 130 salary that I had, like, we weren't idiots with it, thankfully. Like, sure, we still had fun. We went on some vacations, whatever. But my salary before that was like 90 a year. So I had gotten a decent raise right? When I took that job. And so the duration of that job was 6 months. I had it for 6 months. And during that 6 months, all those paychecks, I'm like, okay, try and be smart with it. Put money away, put money away. So by the time we started Macy Media, I had, I think, around $15K in the bank that I was like, okay, my monthly expenses are around $4,000. That gives me about 3 months and change, maybe a little bit more. So we've got some time for me to figure this out. And my wife looked at me and she's like, go. Dude, that weekend, I built my website. I made a quick video just announcing to the world that like, hey, this is what I'm doing full time now. I experienced this layoff. I'm not bitter about it. I'm actually excited about it. It was the kick in the pants I needed, right? Because I was that scared dude. Like I was that guy, SKYLAR, who legit just wanted entrepreneurship so badly, but I just don't know that I would have done it. I was preparing to quit my job, but like, let's say that I had $50K in the bank and let's say that job was going great. Even if I hated it, would I have quit to then start my own thing? I don't know, because it's hard to say no when you're being paid a salary, right? We always hear that quote that like a salary is the drug they give you to forget your dreams. And in my case, it was. And so me getting laid off, I think that was God's way of being like, dude, you've been praying for the courage to do this for years. Like I said, Bobby, I see you, Moana. I see the ocean out there calling you. Like, let's go. Here's your chance. And so that's when it happened, man. October 2019.
That's when it started.
Yep.
And it probably wouldn't have if you didn't have a wife that was so supportive.
She's a boss.
That's
dude.
huge.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people, like especially with my personality, like I said, I'm a pretty outgoing fella, and a lot of people are like, oh, Bobby, you had the guts to do it. You blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, there's a team involved too, right? Like I remember talking to my wife and being like, okay, hon, yeah, we've got a little bit of a savings account to push us, but 15 grand isn't that much when you've got a family of 5. And your mortgage, I think my mortgage at the time was like $1,800 a month. And so we canceled Spotify Premium. We canceled Netflix. We just canceled all these things, probably saved like $100 a month on the subscriptions, right?
But still,
it was something. And it was my version of being like, okay, we're getting scrappy. We're going. And admittedly, even though I don't love this culture now, admittedly, I just fully embraced it for a year and it worked for me, even though the reason I don't love it now is because it's healthy. It's hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
It's not healthy to pull all-nighters and to just glorify working over everything and it takes what it takes type thing. Like, yes, it does, but you can find balance, right? But that first year I kind of went into beast mode and like I still found some balance, and my kids, they didn't forget that they had a dad. I made sure of that. My wife didn't forget she had a husband. But that first year, like, dude, there were moments we didn't pay ourselves, and it was a lot of just figuring stuff out in a solopreneur environment and occasionally working with subcontractors. But it was gritty, dude. And that was just all for me. It was about, how do I replace my salary so that I don't have to go back to corporate? Because corporate for me was like slow poison.
Yeah. When your back's against the wall, that's when you have to win. And so you win.
Dude, it was like posture up. Let's go, baby. Cover those ribs,
So when I was 22, I bought a $50,000 car and I was barely making maybe $1,500 a month on a good month. Like I wasn't making a lot with my business, and my car payment was $800 a month. So I had like barely enough money to just like take a girl on a date, go to a movie, go do this, whatnot. A lot of people would say that wasn't a good financial decision, myself included. But because I had to win or I would lose the car, and like, cause like I made a post about it, everyone knew I was going to buy the car. Like I loved Mustangs. That's what I bought. And because of the pressure there and me having to win, I made more money and worked harder than I ever had before because of that.
Yeah.
But like your thing's in a whole nother step where you have a wife and kids depending on you and the mortgage. And yeah, it's crazy what can happen when you have to win.
I listen to Gary Vee a decent amount, and there's a lot that he says that I love. And it's times and seasons. It comes to like hierarchy of needs, right? And in my case, it's a hierarchy of like values. And my family comes before wealth. Now, there's a difference in my case of like putting food on the table and like purebred wealth, right? Now, if I'm being a workaholic so that I can just be wealthy in my case, that's not a good thing. If I'm being a workaholic because it's how I'm putting food on the table, that's a completely different category. And I would deem that as entirely appropriate and what I should do as a man and as a provider and a husband and a father. But in my case, I was making enough money that first year to survive. There were some scary times where our bank account dipped pretty low. And I'm like, ooh, like I remember one time in my personal savings account, it like dipped down to like $4,000. And I knew I had money on the horizon coming in because I had some invoices out. But I remember like pulling from my savings account to pay the mortgage and being like, this is scary.
Yeah, it was month to month for a while.
Yeah, like this. And like, especially when before we lived a life that wasn't paycheck to paycheck, right?
Yeah, right.
So then going back to that for a full year and even in year 2, so like my business, the way it worked was October 2019, you know, I to the end of that year, I had made, I don't know, maybe $12,000, $13,000 to end out the year. And then that next year, January to December 31st, right? My goal was to hit 6 figures. And because I was like, that's, as a marketer, I'm sitting there and I'm like, that's the story. Like, can you build with your skill sets a 6-figure company in 1 year? And like, I had convinced myself that I was going to. So I barely hit it, dude. Like,
that's awesome.
Like, crossed that mark, looked in QuickBooks, my accounting tool, and I was like, oh, I did it. And I was like December 14th, right? And I was, oh my gosh. So I was super stoked. But then the next year it was like, okay, we're coming from a higher salary than that. And I had to buy a $4,000 computer. Like, I had to do all these different things. I had to add another camera to the mix. So yes, I built a 6-figure business, but at the same time, my expenses were going up for the business and I still wasn't paying myself a lot of money, right? Like that first year after we hit that, I remember I paid myself right before Christmas in 2020. And then we did not pay ourselves again until Valentine's Day. And so I'm like, dude, if you're used to getting paid every 2 weeks and then all of a sudden you go 2 months without getting paid, like that's a hit, right? And finally I transferred some money. Now there was some money in my business account, but I wanted to keep it there. And anytime I could, like if we made more money than I expected, I would transfer some money and I would replenish what we took from our personal account, right?
Yeah.
So I was trying to be smart about it, but dude, it was a game for the first while, right? But once you've done something and you hit that goal, you're like, well, I'm not going to not hit it again.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Once you've done it, once you've built the systems, the business, you built it.
Yeah.
You can not coast, but you can kind of just more start to build out other systems and hire people to run those systems. And
it's 100% it.
But there's a time to hustle.
Yeah.
It's called Utah Hustlers because we're trying to get, help people get to hustle to that 10K month. But then once you're there, you want to make that transfer over to owner, which is kind of like what you've done.
And that's what I love. So I am a fan of the hustle. I'm just not a fan of glorifying an unhealthy lifestyle in the name of hustle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, amen. So I want to talk more about your business and what you do. So you make videos for people. So, and I've looked at a lot of them on your website. So a lot of them look like they're little, kind of like trailers or little like ads or commercials that you build for people to kind of give the customer a overview of what the business does and how they do it. You want to talk more about what you create for people?
So a lot of brands, they do need video content. They need sizzle reels or they need ads to run on social media or to run on YouTube or sometimes TV commercials. And so we do the whole Gary Vee model where we film a bunch of videos at once. And then we do that from kind of like an SEO standpoint of like, what do they need on their website? And could video help them A, rank better on certain pages? And B, could it just help tell their story better? And so it really is a content marketing strategy, but we're using video right at the forefront.
So is there like a certain kind of video that you create for businesses where they say, oh my gosh, because of that video, we've had 1,000 new paying customers over the last month? Or like, is there a certain kind of video that just brings in more clients and customers for business owners?
There are. A lot of them are ads though.
Okay. On
my website, there's one called Powder Watts. They approached us and this is a company that was made in Park City and they do heat cables for your roof. So you're like, oh, that's not like poopery or like squatty potty or like a very funny topic. So we were like, how do you take a product like that and make it funny and have it generate sales? Now, they haven't shared sales data with me, but their whole point was they wanted a video on their website that was a constant salesman that never slept. So that's what we created for them.
Okay.
And it was a little 2.5-minute video. And like I said, it was like, it has some charm and some wit to it. And we worked with them in pre-production to hone in the script. And then my team went and filmed it. And then post-production, it was all my team, and boom.
What does a video like that cost? Like a 60-second little ad like that?
Every agency is going to be a little different. And even my pricing for them was different than it would be today because you're always trying to level up. And I think that the total bill was like $3,000.
Okay.
Today, if I were to do that same quality, it would probably look at like 6,000 to 7,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
It would probably double it.
Okay. So let's say someone doesn't have the ability to pay for that, but they need a little ad and they've got their family or friend that's willing to film them. Do they need to go buy like some fancy equipment, or do you think they could just do it on their smartphone?
Dude, cinematic mode, if you're an iPhone user, oh my goodness. Like, it's great. And you can get there are these mics. There are tons of mics that'll just plug into your lightning cable or your USB-C cable if you have a new iPhone. And like, it'll give you good audio. There's some mics called DJI Wireless 2 or something, and they'll plug right in here, and it's a wireless Bluetooth transmitter. It's like a lav mic that plugs right in here and has a little magnet, so you can just put it behind your clothing. It's so nice, such good audio, professional grade audio, and you're filming with your phone.
Which is still like 4K. Like like the cameras now on phones are incredible.
Insane. And so, no, you do not need a lot of equipment. What you need is a good hook and a good story. So this is what I do. You remember when BuzzFeed was super popular? BuzzFeed back in the day, now I worked at KSL, so I was in the publishing industry. So I was always looking at BuzzFeed headlines and being like, why? Like, yes, they're clickbait, but like they're hooks. That's what they are. There's a reason people are clicking on these things. So I just analyzed all of these headlines of like, why do people click? And got fairly good at getting people to click on my own articles at KSL, right? Now I think the same way, but through video. You have to ask yourself every time you produce a piece of content, what's the hook? What value am I giving? And you don't need to dramatize it or turn it into something super clickbaity, but you do need to make it super interesting. And so I think about the audience that whatever piece of content I'm creating is intended for, whether it's for a brand or whether it's for myself. And it's like, okay, well, what are the pain points of these people? Like, if I'm giving them this message, like, let's take one of my clients right now that we produce tons of video assets for every given month. They do knee injections. You have arthritis in your knees, which is a non-curable disease, and you don't want to go under the knife for surgery because a total knee replacement is going to be costly. It's going to be painful. Recovery is awful, and you just may not want that. So these folks will inject a fluid into your knee, which basically cushions in between your knee joints so you're not bone on bone. And it's like a little water bed in between your knee joint, right? That allows you to have a pretty mobile life. Tons of people have great experiences, but it's like, how do we tell their story? I'm trying to hook people on social media who have knee pain. So already I'm at a disadvantage because seniors aren't nearly as active on social media as people our age or younger, right? And so I have to think through tons of different hooks for how am I going to grab them in the first 3 seconds? And a lot of it has to do with certain types of knee pain. Have you experienced this? Have you experienced that? Want to get back to a more mobile life? Does your knee hurt when? Do you have knee pain at X point, right? And we're using that same strategy to create blog content, to create video content, social media content, little graphics in our one-pagers, little PDFs that are downloadable on the website, et cetera. In our printed materials in their medical practices, we have, statements that are like, they're engaging because we want people to read more, right?
Yeah.
Or to watch more. So the biggest thing that you can do if you are on a budget trying to create some video content to promote your product, your service, your brand, whether it's a personal brand or professional, get good at understanding who the audience is and how to hook them. And it's going to require a ton of variation and a ton of testing. And it's going to be frustrating. And sometimes you have to reverse engineer things. And so you have to hit their pain point. And then you're like, okay, well, if their pain point is this, how do I turn that into the negative of that? Or how do I spin it into the positive of that? So you reverse engineer and do all these different things. And you're like, what sounds better? What would I click on? Or what would I watch? And then in video specifically, this is where the hook really matters. It needs to appear within the first 3 to 5 seconds. There's a reason why YouTube, those skippable ads, they give you 5 seconds. If you're doing any sort of thing in that regard, you need to hook them quick. even short form content that isn't like, let's say that you're doing this all organic and it doesn't have any paid ad spend behind it. You can still hook them pretty quickly. You just touch that pain point in a variety of ways, whatever they're experiencing, and then you get right into how you help.
Okay. So you always talk about the pain point first.
Yep.
So if you're a photographer, you maybe say, oh, are you tired of having poor quality pictures on your Tinder or something like that?
Yep.
Or video, like, are you tired of like the low budget iPhone look on your video, which like, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yep.
But there is another level that's just like, okay, this brand knows what they're doing.
The one I've been getting recently in my Instagram feed it's a video creation course. And these guys are targeting me because they know that I love video because it's like reel after reel after reel on my feed. And I clearly talk about this stuff. So Instagram has me in some pool over here. And these guys are targeting that pool that I'm in. And their hook is basically like, bet you didn't know your iPhone could do this. And then they have all these beautifully shot examples of stuff that was filmed on an iPhone. And it makes it be like, why am I paying $4,000 for a camera body and another $2,000 for a lens when I can get that on an iPhone, right? That's right. Their hook is like, we want to go after you and teach you through our course. We're going to teach you these tricks and tips that like your common iPhone user doesn't know.
Okay. So I bet you didn't know.
Yep.
That's a really good hook. I like that.
Yeah. And it could be done with anything, right? Mm-hmm. So I bet you didn't know this is causing your knee pain.
Yeah. So I bet you someone, and maybe this is what you do, but like someone could go create a bunch of reels which has different hooks, and whichever one takes off, then you can go make a longer ad
100%.
with that hook. So you test some things before you go and do this whole production on something that you don't have any evidence for that's going to work.
100%. The other thing that you should absolutely do if you're getting serious is like, let's say that you have a product you're trying to sell and you're like, okay, Bobby, well, I don't really know how to create a hook. So literally you could type into Google how to create marketing hook and you'll get a bajillion results, right? Stay on page 1. They're usually the best. But then go look at competitors. Go check out their social media feeds. Go and try and find their ads. A really quick way to get targeted by an ad is to literally just go to their website. And then within a couple of days, if they're doing paid media, you'll probably get targeted with their ad. And you can see what types of hooks they're using. You can search by hashtag of whatever industry it is. So like sometimes I'll go search a hashtag of like knee pain. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, my client is in the knee pain world, right? That's their target audience is people who have knee pain. And then I can see what everybody else is posting and it gives me ideas of like, oh, they had a video that hit 1 million organically. I'm going to watch that video and I'm going to see what they did. And they may have just given me my format. And now I'm going to go on camera as Bobby, or I'm going to get my mom to go on camera because she's the audience demographic, right? And it's going to be like, hey, Mom, I need you to say these things, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, somebody's already tested the idea for me. We know that hook has worked for them. Right.
Yeah. Sounds like 15, 30 minutes on the internet, you can find a pretty good hook that will probably take off.
Yep.
And if it doesn't, then you test the next one. And if that doesn't work, then you text it. Like you might need to test 10 or 20, 30 before you get something. But I mean, the time's passing anyway, so you might as well be testing stuff. So after someone has a good hook, what would be the next step in creating the ad?
Invest in some good audio equipment. Like, yes, it's produced with your phone or whatnot. If you can just match a good audio source with that, then you got the hook, you got good visual, good audio, like you're golden.
Sounds like it's not all that hard.
It's not all that hard.
Go find the hook.
Yes.
Use your phone and just invest into a microphone at least. I've heard that audio is the most important thing. Like if you don't have good audio, people are out. Would you say that's true?
I would say that is very true. And occasionally, like on short form content, something that we are seeing more and more is captions being put on YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikToks, etc. So there's these bouncy captions that are really engaging from a visual standpoint. A lot of people, their phones are always on silent. And they didn't have their AirPods with them or some audio source to be able to listen. And so it was like on Instagram, you always had your phone on silent. On LinkedIn, you always had your phone on silent. And half the time you were like at work and it had to be on silent because you were in a boring meeting and you were scrolling through. And so it's one of those things where it's like in today's world, a lot of people, they use the captions to not only visually engage you, but also to remove the need for audio in that sense. Or if you have crappy audio, the captions can help you to minimize how crappy your audio is. But Yes.
So what does the body look like of the ad?
I think about it like a play. You have act 1, you have act 2, you have act 3. So act 1 is essentially your intro or your hook. And you're quickly getting into the body, which is, hi, I'm Macy Media. I produce high quality content for businesses. Your pain point as a business is that you don't have an internal team producing content. You want professional content, but you don't have the skill sets to do that. Hey, right here, got you, right? And in this case, like, people want to do podcasts. They have a lot to say, but you know how to produce podcasts. They don't know the first thing about producing the podcast. So you hit that pain point through a variety of hooks, then your body content is the problem that you solve through the service or product that you offer. And then after that, it's the outro, which is essentially your call to action.
So the body, should people immediately say like, oh, I'm so-and-so and this is what I do?
If it's a business, nobody cares that I'm Bobby. They care about what I can do for them. It's a great way to tell a story on social media if you literally just think of it like that. I need to hook them. I need to present what I offer as a solution for the hook, the pain point that they're feeling, and then I need to tell them where they can find out more. And that's the CTA, whether it's go to this website or whether it's click on the link below or whether it's subscribe for more content or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
I've been seeing ads lately that are UGC, so that's a user-generated content.
Okay.
I have a friend who they hired him. He's not like a professional video creator. He's a finance guy. And so like he helps with my retirement. And so anyways, this dude, he was producing some iPhone UGC content for them that they ran as an ad on Instagram because it was raw, it was real. So then he just has a little bit of B-roll. Most of it's talking head, but then he has a little bit of B-roll cutaway shots to him just like using this chirp tool. And then at the end, he's like, hey, click the link below and you can find out more. Right. And it's like, dude, this is raw. Like there was no color correction done. They didn't even put captions on it. But my friend has a great personality, so the UGC content just worked, right? So it doesn't even have to be you on camera. You need somebody who's pleasant. If you have your hustle or your business or whatever, and you're trying to, build, and you're like, look, I just don't have SKYLAR's personality. I'm not going to go on video, and I don't feel comfortable doing that. There is a website called Trend.io, and it's basically a marketplace where you can hire people. You can send them a product or hire them to talk about a service, and these are professional creators, and it's starting at like $100 a project. So it's not astronomical, but it's like starting at $100, you could have somebody creating a 1-minute spoof on your brand. And it's like, are you for real? That's a great resource for people who are on a budget, who don't want to be the star in their own content.
I like that. That's cool. Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, super cool. And then the other thing is we all have our friends, and there's so many of us who have these people in our network who have pleasant personalities, and they're already doing stuff on Instagram. And it's like they've built up their personal brands to a point where like, oh, anything that SKYLAR says, I want to listen to because I'm a fan of SKYLAR. So he could be talking about politics and I'll listen to him. He could be talking about religion and I'll listen to him. He could be talking about a product and I'll listen. And that's powerful. And so you have people in your network, SKYLAR, and everyone listening has people in their network that's like, if they're good on camera, give them the product and tell them to be authentic and be themselves. And if they actually believe in your product, they'll be able to sell it without being salesy.
I think that's something I need to do a lot more, is use my network to help like promote what I do. And because it's so different when someone is talking about you and selling your product for you than you trying to sell it, because there's so much more credibility when I say, oh my gosh, I love these 100%. Particular shoes that I got, because they know there's no hidden like agenda. Because like if I sell someone on a video for you, like they know I don't get paid for that, or they're at least going to assume that I'm sending them to you because you do a good job and you're easy to work with.
100%.
So there's a lot of trust built right there. So as far as the body goes, we are showing them the solution, like how the solution works.
Yeah.
Because you got the hook, then the body, kind of maybe you'll say who you are depending on whether it's a business brand or personal brand. Yep. But then it sounds like you just show your product working and the result that your product brings. And then you touched on this a little bit, but I want to go a little deeper really quick, is the outro. What does the outro specifically look like no matter what it is?
Give somebody something to do. When it comes to a product or a service, like if I'm talking about Macy Media, then my outro needs to be focused on how can I get you to take action on something? Either follow me for more, visit my website, go buy this at this website, There's got to be a call to action. And so if you're producing content for a brand or a service, the outro should re-emphasize that call to action.
Something I always say is the easier something is to do, the more likely someone is to do it.
Yes.
So when it comes to the CTA, your call to action, make it an easy one, right? Because
Yes.
if you say go type in the website, well, versus go click on this link that's in the comments, that's a lot easier for people to do. So they're going to be more likely to do it.
Yep.
You know, you want to give them the fewest amount of clicks and taps possible to get to your product or service or to the place where they buy.
Yep. Comes down to the same thing we experience on websites. You want to give people the easiest user experience that you can. And you do that, you're going to have a lot of followers and you're going to have more sales than you would have otherwise, right?
Yeah, that's basically what Apple did with their phones is
100%.
Android had a lot of different features, more features than an iPhone could do, but iPhone was very easy to use and they blew up because of that simplicity.
Yep.
How long should an ad be? Like a minimum length and then a max length?
It depends on what type of ad it is, right? So I mentioned that Powder Watts example. That was 2.5 minutes, but we had various hooks throughout the video and it was meant to be more of that squatty potty feel on a budget. Like it was funny. We were kind of telling the story throughout and it was a longer story that we were trying to tell. If they use that as an ad, they would use it as an ad on YouTube. If they wanted a different version, then we would have cut a different version to use on Instagram or Facebook, etc. So if you're targeting on the socials, if you're running those types of ads where we consume content vertically, you're probably looking at no longer than 1 minute because people they have short attention spans. And you have to remember, anytime you're advertising to them, you are interrupting what they're currently doing. That's why the hook is so important because they're doom scrolling. And so you're interrupting their experience to bring them something else. And that's why you have to hook them, right? You stick to like 15, 30, 60-second variations, you'll be solid.
Perfect. Any last advice for anybody creating some sort of ad or commercial for their business?
Yes. This is the most important advice I will give all day long. Do not get paralysis by analysis. Do not overthink it. Grab your stinking phone and start producing content. You just have to do it. Mr. Beast says this all the time. He's like, your first 100 videos are going to suck, but you're going to learn so much and you're going to become that much more confident in front of the camera, talking about XYZ. You're going to feel awkward when you do this. I've been doing this for years and there are moments where I still just have to take a deep breath and I'm like, get out of your own head, Bobby. Let's go. And if you need to do a little positive self-talk before you do this, do it. I'll be like, Bobby, you got this. Let's go. You've done this 100 times. Easy for you. One take wonder. And if it's not one take, 10 take wonder, right?
Yeah.
Like, just do it. The worst thing you can do is be like, oh, well, XYZ excuse. And I think my iPhone camera my iPhone's being glitchy today. No, it's not. You're being glitchy, right? You just don't want to do it. So you're finding every reason not to. And at some point you just got to cut the excuses and you just got to level up and say, look, worst case scenario, I'm not going to get any sales from this. Worst case scenario, I'm going to learn something from this. And that's the worst case scenario. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So just do it.
Because we all wait for the confidence to do it.
Yep.
But the confidence doesn't come until you actually do it and get good at it.
Yeah.
So just got to start.
Can you imagine how many people have actually bought all of the gear that you have to do podcasts and they haven't even produced an episode yet because they have paralysis by analysis?
That was me for a long time. I bought a lot of the gear and was just like, okay, now what? When do I record? Yeah.
Yep.
And the only thing that got me to get my first episode done was I co-produced it with a friend. And so it was like, we just set a date and we're like, hey, this is when we're doing it.
And you're like, wow, my world didn't end. People actually still like me, right?
Yeah. Judgment doesn't matter. That's what everyone's really afraid of when it comes down to it is
100%.
Judgment. And people are going to judge you no matter what. So
Yeah.
give them something good to talk about.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
If you are entering this phase of content production, you can systematize things by batch filming. And I think that this is important. Now, I do this for my clients and I do this for myself. Change your shirt, record 2 videos in the same clothing, swap out a shirt, record a few more, and batch record. Because when you are set up to record and when you're on it and you're really feeling like you can deliver, you have to ride that wave. Because the second you put that phone down, you might lose that momentum. And so you may think like, oh, I can just do it tonight, tomorrow, whatever. I've recorded a video now and I'll just do it then. No, assembly line, batch filming, and then batch edit. And then you have all your content ready to post. The worst thing you can do as a creator or somebody who's trying to promote your brand or your business is trying to always create content on the fly. It'll always end up underproduced and underthought out. And so if you can just dedicate some time to batch record 5 videos at once, even if they're 1 minute a piece, and then dedicate another hour to just edit those videos, right? Even if you're just editing it on your phone with like the captions app on iPhone, that's a great one. Or like another one is InShot, InShot. It's $10 a year, and it allows you to create the cuts and the splices and crop and zoom in and things like that to create, some simple effects. But like if you batch film, then batch edit, and then you're just ready to have that content to post, you are going to save yourself so much time and so much headache. And it's going to be easier to publish content on a regular basis. And I think that's something that people need to know, because we always are just like, oh, I'm just going to make a video real quick. I need to post something. And then we just post subpar content because we're trying to do too much on the fly. I'll put it in these terms. Be deliberate about your content.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Well, Bobby, thanks for coming on.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
Yeah, it was. Appreciate you coming. My guest today was Bobby Macy. If you'd like to get in contact with Bobby, go to his website, maceymedia.com, MACEY media.com. There's a nice, easy contact form on there that you can fill out to communicate with him. He's also very active on LinkedIn, or you can find him on most social media platforms at Bob Macy. All the links are in the show notes. That wraps up today's episode. If this episode was valuable to you, it would mean the world to me if you would take a minute and share this podcast with a friend or family member that could use it to build their business. If you've already done that, thank you so much. Consider giving it a rating and review so we can let the podcast players know people are listening. And as always, it's not just about knowing what to do, it's about taking the required action. Until next time, keep building.